Welcome to chapter 4, and chapter 4 is completely dedicated to temp data. If anything is complex in this session management thing, it is temp data. View data or view bag or session variables, they are a little bit easy to understand. So I'm dedicating 10 questions over here, 10 most asked questions around temp data. So this is a 15 minutes of video where we will try to understand what is temp data, how it is different from view data, how to persist temp data, what is the difference between keep and peek, then how is temp data different from a session variable. And what we will also do is at the last, we will try to put a big picture. So if the interviewer is asking you that, okay, what is the difference between view data, view bag and temp data and session variables, let us put a big picture ahead and see that how we can handle this whole session management questions, right? So let us get started. Explain temp data, or in what scenarios do you use temp data? Temp data is one of the session management techniques, and as the name says, temporary data means you have control that you want the state to be maintained for one request or for two requests or for three requests. For example, if you look at session variables, in session variables, right from when the browser opens till the browser close, the session variable are available, right? You don't have control saying that, okay, now let us go and dispose the session variable. But here in case of temp data, you have control. You can say that, okay, do I want this value in this request as well as in the second request and as well as in the third request, and in the fourth request, if I don't want it, I can control temp data. So temp data stands in between the view data and session variables. Session variables scope is, right from the browser open till the browser close, while view data is only from action to the view. So now you have temp data here, which is like in between, which says that I can persist across one request or across two requests, or depending on what your requirement is. Will temp data persist across action redirects, or when we go from an action to action in a single request, will temp data persist? The answer is yes. So if you see here, I'm setting here a temp data TD value as hello. And from here, I'm doing a redirect to action to index 1. So if I go and if I execute this, you will see that this X is having a hello. So yes, temp data persists across redirect to action. In a single request, temp data is always available. In a single request, don't make a mistake in the interview. In a single request, if you set a temp data, it is available irrespective. You go from an action to an action, you go from an action to a view, temp data for that request is available. Now a very connected question which comes here. What is the difference between view data and temp data? Now if you remember in the last video, I said that view data does not persist from action to action. View data does not persist across request. So the difference between temp data and view data is that view data does not persist from action redirects, neither view data persists across request. While in case of temp data, the state can be maintained across request depending on how you want to control it, right? So we will come into that point at how to control that temp data. We'll come to that point very soon. So the difference between temp data and view data, again I repeat, view data does not persist across request. View data does not persist across action redirect, while in case of temp data, they persist. If temp data is read, will it persist across request? In the same session, will it persist across request? The answer is no. You can see here, I'm setting this temp data here to hello. And in this line 20, I'm reading it. I'm reading the value. So if I read the value, and if I again send a second request without closing the browser. When I say without closing the browser, that means that the session is still on. If you remember, I said session is right, from when the browser opens till the browser closes, right? So in the same session, if I go now, you can see the value is null. Now, if you don't read the value, then the value will be persisted across request until the value is read. So until the value is read somewhere, the value will keep the value will be maintained across request. The state will be maintained across request. You can see here now, I'm saying here temp data TD is equal to hello. The value is set, but it is not read anywhere. It is not read anywhere. Now, if I go back to again, let us say home, I have still not closed the browser. You can see the value is persisting. So across request now, the value is maintained until someone reads it. Either it is read in a variable or either it is read in the view, right? So in that request, if it is read, then that value is not maintained for the subsequent request. What is the use of keep method? This question can also be asked in a tailored fashion. How can we maintain state of temp data across request? Now things are getting really complex. Remember, this temp data, it has a lot of ifs and buts, right? So the interviewer can really confuse you. So let us try to understand this. So if you remember, I said in the, just some minutes back, once you read the temp data, it is not available for the next request. I repeat this sentence. If you remember, I said that once you read the temp data in the current request or in any request, after that, for any subsequent request, the temp data will not be available. But if you call keep method, but if you say keep this TD temp data, it will be available. For example, you can see here, I'm setting the temp data, I'm reading it, but also I'm calling keep. So if I call keep and if I come back, so if I come back again, you can see the hello is still seen, right? So by calling keep, temp data value is persisted for the next request. So just two situations, remember it. First one, if you don't read the data, it will be persisted for the next request. If you read the data and if you call the keep method, it will be persisted for the next request. If you read the data and you don't call keep, it will not be persisted for the next request. What is the use of peek method? Now things are getting very confusing, right? Because we have keep and we have a rhyming method called as peek, right? So peek method does two things at one time. If you see here, this line number 20, what it is doing is it is reading the value, and this line number 21 is saying that persist for the next request, right? If you want to do both of these things in one line, then you can call peek. So what peek does, it reads the value as well as it calls keep. So if we say here where x is equal to temp data dot peek td, what this will do internally is that it will read the value into the x variable as well as it will call the keep method. So there you can see the temp data TD is null, and when I run this line number 22, it is actually running line number 20 and 21, both of them together, right? So there it goes, it executes. Now if I come back again, you can see that there is hello. So that means once you call the peek method, it will actually go and not only read the value, but it will also maintain the value for the next request. How is temp data different from a session variable? Please note, as we have said previously also, session variable are alive or their scope is there right from when the browser opens till the browser closes. So for all the requests, they persist, and we don't have any control saying that, okay, do we want the state to be stopped at the second request or third request? That control we don't have in case of sessions. While in case of temp data, by using the peek and the keep, we can control saying that we want the state to be maintained for one request or two requests or three requests, right? So temp data is mostly used in action redirects. So if on the same request, if you're having action redirect, you will use temp data. And if you want to control saying that, do I want it for the next request or not, you will use temp data. Again, one more connected question, very simple question. If you restart the server, will temp data and session variables persist? No, absolutely not. In case if you have stored your sessions in an in-proc server, right? So mostly by default it is in-proc, it will not get maintained. In case you store it in an out-proc server, or in case you make your sessions out-proc, then only it can be maintained in restarts. Is temp data private to a user? Absolutely. Temp data is completely private to a single user because temp data uses session variables. So temp data of one user will not be shared with the other user. Now that we know what is temp data, what is view data and session variables, let us go ahead and once let us revise everything. If let us say normally the interviewers, what they do is they ask you questions like what is the difference between view data versus temp data versus session variables, right? So let us go ahead and draw a bigger picture and let us try to see that what is the best answer we can put before the interviewer. So let us first start with session. So guys, we are actually revising now and let us see that what is the best answer we can put before the interviewer. In case of session, so let us say you send a request. So here is the browser open, right? So this is request 1, then you have response 1, then you have request 2, and then you have response 2, and then you have request 3, right? Your response. So this is one session, right from the browser opens till the browser closes. Session variable scope is right from here till here. So until the browser closes. So the scope of session variable is this much. Second, view data. View data or view bag. Please note, view bag is a syntactic sugar over view data. In this case, so let's say you send a request, you have a controller, and from controller you go and you invoke a view and you come back. So the scope of view data is only from here till here. This is the scope. Not less, not more. In case if you are redirecting from one controller to another controller, so in case if you have this situation, where you are saying this is one controller and from this one controller you are redirecting to another controller, right? View data is not maintained here. Please note, view data is not maintained here. Only from the controller to the view. You set the data in the controller and you read it in the view, and that's it. And now coming to the most confusing part, temp data. It is not confusing now. I hope that things are getting clear. So here what happens? First thing, you are either going from controller to the controller, you are either going from controller to the view, the value is maintained. So first thing, let's say this is request 1. And if you set a temp data here, it is maintained across. Now, for the next request, you want it or not, that is situational. That is situational. So first thing, when will it persist? So let us say first thing, when will it not persist? So it will not persist if you read the data, the value will not be persisted. Not persisted. Now, if you read the data and if you call keep, it will be persisted. Or if you don't read, if you do not read, it will persist. So you can see here now, here we have control. Here we have, we can say that, okay, how do you want to maintain the state for the next request, right? So depending on that, the data will be maintained for the next request, right? So session variable, right from the browser open till the browser close. View data, not 1 point less, not 1 point more, from controller to the view. Temp data, you go across controller, you go across view in a single request, it is maintained. And then you have this situational control in your hand saying that, okay, if I read it, it is persisted. If I read it, if I call keep and peek, it is persisted. If I say no read, it is persisted, and so on, right? So you have control that do you want this temp data in the next request or not, right? So when you are speaking before the interviewer, you should put this bigger picture in your mind. So that brings us to the end of chapter 4, and I would like to congratulate you because we have crossed 50 questions here. So after this video, I will be revising all these 13 questions which are flashed of temp data here. Do go ahead, pause the video and try to read the answers once and revise yourself. Second, also I have given an ebook, and in this ebook, all the one-liners are mentioned of all the questions, which I have taken in the video. But I would suggest that watch the video as well, because once you watch the video, there are some practical demos I'm showing, right? So use both the tools. Watch the video and read the ebook. Watch the video, read the ebook, watch the video, read the ebook. Happy learning, happy job hunting.